an approximate map of the tribal distribution of the 12 tribes before they were exiled by the Assyrians.
Okay, that's in the Common Kingdom, or is that before the breach of Jeroboam?
No, there's after the breach of Jeroboam. No, including up from the time they entered the land till they were exiled.
Okay, so they all stayed in their tribal lands, pretty much according to those borders that Joshua set out for them, until they were all exiled.
Yes, that is correct.
Except for Dan, and Dan did a little jump from down here up to the north, didn't he?
And there were other movements, but approximately for our purposes, we can take the borders as given here. This second map shows us that the, as we explained within the book, the tribes, that the extent of Israelite extension before their exile actually covered a good portion of the Middle East. It included not only what is now known as the present state of Israel, included a portion of Egypt, a portion of Saudi Arabia, all of Syria, Lebanon, portion of Turkey. The tribe of Dan ruled over the island of Cyprus, and they reached up right up to the Euphrates River.
Okay, so they went to the Euphrates River, and is that this is during the captivity of the Assyrians?
No, this was before the captivity of the Assyrians. The Israelites were to be found throughout this region.
Yes.
But there were other peoples mixed in with them.
I see.
They lived amongst other peoples, between other peoples.
I see.
Alongside them.
So they were spilling over the borders even back before the Assyrian captivity.
Exactly.
And we did. I've got a picture of the tribes under David and Solomon, and apparently during the heyday of the of the Israelite superpower, more or less under Solomon, they extended up here to the Euphrates River, and down toward Egypt, the river of Egypt, which is north of the Nile.
In our understanding of scriptures, that not only in the time of David, but also before David, in the time of Saul, and even for a period in the time of the Judges, the Israelites were to be found within these regions of what we call, for want of a better term, the borders of Greater Israel.
Okay, so they were spilling over the borders.
Okay, that was up until the time of the Assyrian exile.
Okay.
We have another map here. We have a map here showing how one portion of the exiles was taken from the land of Israel, taken by the Assyrians and taken up into Assyria and also into Media, where it meant one amongst the places into which Israelite exiles were taken, as mentioned, the cities of the Medes.
Yes.
So that is in the area of northern Iran and also present-day Iraq. That was where they were taken. We have another map here.
This map here, this map here,
this map shows the Assyrian portions of the Assyrian Empire as it then was, and the purpose of this map is more or less to show us, to give us an idea of different events which are described in the book where they were.
Yes, so here's Assyria here,
yes.
And the tribes went up basically into Syria, and the Caucasus Mountains are very
up here. They're not that far away. Actually, they're not that far away. Just
and they're a real border. They are a real solid border for migration on the Caucasus Mountain, and then there's the Black Sea. So the question is, could they have gone east or?
So we have another map over here, which shows.
Oh, okay.
Which shows some of the paths of migration. I emphasise some of them, not all of them.
Yes.
I also emphasise that the Israelites split up. They were split up by force, and also by force of circumstances. They split up into different groups, and these different groups had histories of their own and developments of their own.
Yes.
Sometimes they returned and rejoined each other, intermixed with each other, or split off apart from each other. And different events happened to one. What happened to one group did not necessarily happen to the other. But over the course of centuries, they all moved to the west. Some of them went to west at a reasonably early date, not long after having been exiled by the Assyrians, and some of them several centuries afterwards, up until even 1,000 years afterwards. Yes. But over this period of time, this long period of time, as far as history is concerned, all of them went in the general direction of the west. And this is a map shows some of the paths of migration.
Okay.
Since we have some of them, especially the Sumerians, they went what is now northern Turkey for a period, and then they went westward, crossed over the Bosphorus Straits into southeast Europe, and continued on upwards into Central Europe, where some of them continued into Scandinavia and others westwards into France, and over the sea into the British Isles. Whereas others moved further north, up here to the Caucasus areas, especially also including part of the Sumerians again. Now they did push on the Sumerians, and those the people become known as the Scythians. In Scythia, in this area of Eurasia.
Yeah, the steppes of Russia is up here.
Steppes of Russia.
With grasslands up here, right?
Yes.
Now,
up here, yes.
Europe is pretty much forests, though, isn't it? I mean, at this period in time, and it's sort of a forested area, and it was hard to settle this forested area initially. The steppes of Russia might have been easy earlier on, but then...
You see this line here, that approximately gives us an idea where the steppes were. Very approximate.
I see.
And
that was a route, the steppe along the northern route, north of the Black Sea, is one route to the west, and then the other route would be across the Bosphorus. Now that seems to be a big geographical barrier there, is it, or is it?
No. Actually, it's an easily crossed waterway, and a lot of people cross that in both directions.
So they cross that in both.
It's quite frequent for people to come from Europe and invade what is now Turkey, Anatolia, as it was known in that age. At that time, it was also well known for peoples from Anatolia to move into Southeast Europe. Not only Israelites, but all types of peoples.
Okay,
so it's a well-known route. A historical route of migrating peoples, migrating populations.
Okay, so around about the time of the Romans, where were the tribes at that time? Were they pretty much moving to the west?
Yes.
At that time?
About the time of the Romans, a good portion of the Israelites, of the descendants of the Israelite exiles, were where we find them today. There were exceptions.
So they'd made their way well into Europe by that time, had they?
They were already in Ireland. They were already in Britain.
They'd already crossed the English Channel.
A portion, most of them. Most of those, the ancestors of most of those who are today in Britain had already reached there. Had already come there. The Anglo-Saxons were still in Germany, but they shortly afterwards would also move into England. There were also the Vikings who also came to the British Isles, were still in Scandinavia. There were also people known as the Nephtalites at that time who were in Central Asia. Who later moved into Scandinavia and supplemented and completed the population of the Scandinavian region. And as we said before, there was those who remained behind in north of the Caucasus area and to the east of it, around the Caspian Sea, who became the Khuzars.